In a village surrounded by silent mountains and rivers that spoke with the breeze, lived a young man named Haru. No one remembered the last time he had laughed. He walked the paths with his gaze downcast, as if he carried stones in his soul. His father had died when he was a child, his mother had left in search of a better life, and his childhood friends had faded like mist over time. Haru sought comfort in others' words, in healers and wise men from the village, but the external voices only filled his mind with noise. One afternoon, an old monk named Ryokan found him by the lake, staring motionlessly at the water. "You're looking for someone to heal you," said the monk, sitting beside him. "But some wounds only respond to silence and patience." Haru looked at him, confused. "What if I have no one?" he asked. Ryokan smiled. "Then you already have everything you need to begin." The monk asked Haru to follow him to the temple, a secluded place in the mountains where the wind seemed to speak an ancient language. In the days that followed, Haru devoted himself to watching, to breathing, to walking without haste. Yet doubt still nested in his mind. One day, while meditating under an old tree, Haru asked the monk, "I've been listening to the wind, the water, the birds' songs, but my soul still feels empty. How can I heal if I keep feeling this void inside me?" Ryokan, without taking his eyes off the horizon, replied, "Healing doesn't come as a gift, Haru. It comes as a lesson, one you must learn by yourself. The emptiness is not your enemy. It is the space where everything you need can grow. Let go of what you cannot control." Human beings seek healing in the company of others, but true healing comes when you realize that peace has always been within you, waiting to be heard. Haru fell silent, feeling for the first time a stillness in his heart. In the distance, the sound of the water seemed to echo the monk's words. "Listen, you don't need anyone to heal." Days passed, and Haru began to notice that the stillness in his heart was not a sad void, but an invitation to look within. Each morning, before dawn, he walked alone through the fields, his eyes open but silent. He would stop by the river, where the waters seemed to tell forgotten stories, and feel the air around him like an invisible embrace. One day, while on his usual walk, Monk Ryokan found him again, gazing at the horizon. The old man looked at him gently. "What have you discovered, Haru?" he asked. Haru sighed, still looking at the sky. "I discovered that suffering does not define me. For so long I believed I needed to find answers in others, that someone had to give me something to heal. But now I understand that healing doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. Pain, loneliness, they're just moments that are part of the path." Ryokan slowly smiled. "That's right, young disciple. What you search for outside is already within you. You just need to let go of what no longer serves you and allow the truth to reveal itself in silence." That night, Haru stayed awake under the starry sky. As he contemplated the vastness of the universe, something deep began to stir within. He no longer felt the need to search for answers outside. The noise of daily life had faded, and all that remained was the whisper of the wind, the rustling of the leaves, and the peace beginning to rise from within. At dawn, he approached the monk, who awaited him by the temple gate. "I've begun to understand, Master," Haru said with a serene voice. "I've learned to listen within. I don't need anyone to heal, because I already have everything I need inside myself. But how can I know if I'm truly healed?" Ryokan looked at him with deep calm. "Healing is not a destination, Haru. It is a continuous process. The one who seeks healing has no end, only a path. And that path is filled with moments of learning, of presence, and of acceptance. As long as you remain in harmony with yourself, you will keep healing day by day. You don't need to wait for a moment of perfection. It is the acceptance of your imperfection that brings you peace. Haru remained silent, letting the monk's words slowly sink into his heart. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about being at peace with oneself. As the weeks went by, Haru delved deeper into silence. Each day, in his solitude, he learned to observe his thoughts without identifying with them. He discovered he was not his pain, nor his sadness, nor his fear. These were only visitors that came and went, leaving behind a fleeting trace. One afternoon, while walking through a field covered in wildflowers, he stopped in front of a small stream. The stones in the water reflected the sunlight, and for the first time, Haru understood something fundamental. The waters never resisted the stones. On the contrary, the stones were gently shaped by the current, adapting to its rhythm. He sat by the shore and, with a smile, realized that he too needed to learn to flow with life, to let obstacles not be something that stopped him, but something that transformed him. At that moment, Ryokan appeared, as if he had read his thoughts. "Do you see, Haru?" he asked. "Water doesn't fight the stones. It flows around them, it transforms them. You can do the same with your pain, your sadness, or anything that causes you suffering. When you stop fighting, you begin to heal." Haru nodded in silence, feeling the truth of his words deep within. He finally understood that healing wasn't about erasing what hurt, but embracing it, accepting it, and continuing to flow. The days turned into months, and Haru was no longer the lost young man who had arrived at the temple. He had learned to see the world with new eyes, without the weight of others' expectations, without the need to seek from others what he already carried within. He had begun to heal, not because he had found a miraculous solution, but because he had allowed himself to be who he truly was. One afternoon, while walking the path that led to the temple, he encountered an old childhood friend. It was a young man from the village, known for his contagious laughter and joy. But today, his face reflected the fatigue of the years and the sadness of an invisible burden. "Haru, what have you done to change so much?" his friend asked, curious. Haru looked at him, his gaze serene, as if each word carried peace. "I haven't done anything special," he replied. "I've just learned to be with myself. I stopped waiting for others to heal me. The cure didn't come from outside. It came from within, by accepting that I am enough as I am. Peace is not in the answers, but in the acceptance of the questions that no longer need answering." His friend looked at him in silence, eyes full of doubt. Haru understood that look. He had been there himself, searching outside for what was never lost. "Each of us has our own path," Haru said gently. "Mine has taught me that you don't need anyone to heal. You only need to learn to listen to what's already inside you." His friend looked at him for a long moment, as if Haru's words had begun to plant a seed in his heart. That night, while the stars shone brightly above the temple, Haru sat watching the fire burning in the small bonfire. Monk Ryokan approached and, as before, sat silently by his side. "Have you found peace, Haru?" asked Ryokan, his eyes reflecting the serenity of many years of wisdom. Haru looked into the fire, and for a moment, his thoughts dissolved into the dancing flames. He didn't need to answer immediately. He knew the answer was in the air he breathed, in the stillness of his being. Finally, his words came out soft and clear. "Peace is not something you seek. It's something you recognize. I used to think I needed to find it in others, in their words, in external cures. But now I understand that peace has always been here," he said, touching his chest. "It is the result of being in harmony with oneself, of embracing imperfection and letting go of what no longer serves." Ryokan smiled, knowing Haru had reached the deepest understanding. True healing comes when you stop seeking outside what can only be found within. Silence, solitude, and acceptance are your greatest allies. Life doesn't need to be fixed. It only needs to be lived. Haru closed his eyes, feeling for the first time the weight of the world disappear. There was nothing to fix, nothing to change. Only a constant flow, a rhythm of moments that simply were. And in that flow there was healing. At dawn, Haru rose before the sun, as was his custom, and walked to the edge of the lake. The water's surface was still, reflecting the clear sky and distant mountains. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for having found something new, but for having let go of all that no longer served him. In the distance, he saw his village friend walking toward the temple. Haru approached him and, without a word, gently embraced him. He didn't need to explain anything. His presence, his peace, was enough. Healing is not something to be sought in others, Haru said with a calm smile. It is something that blooms the moment you stop needing to be healed and simply allow yourself to be. Healing is within you, in your ability to accept all that you are. The young man looked at him, slowly nodding, as if he had finally understood what Haru had learned. It wasn't about finding peace in a faraway place or waiting for someone else to fix him. Peace was a gift born from self-acceptance, from inner stillness, from the abandonment of struggle. And so, with the sun rising on the horizon, Haru understood that he didn't need anyone to heal. He was already whole. He was already at peace. The journey of healing had, at last, reached its end. And it wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning, one he would walk lightly, knowing the peace he had long sought had always been within him.